speakers, fellow Toastmasters, and other guests. My love of photography started at a very early age. I remember being at my grandmother's place, surrounded by aunts and uncles as they were going through these piles of photographs. And the reactions that elicited from my family was just something that just excited me. The laughter was deafening in the room. And I knew that was something I wanted to do. Whatever it was they were looking at, I wanted those pictures. I remember growing up, my dad had a Polaroid camera. And if you remember a Polaroid camera, it was magic. You take a picture and then you shake it, and you had a picture. You didn't have to send the film away for it to be developed. Well, I couldn't keep my hands off that camera. And my dad, thankfully, noticed this interest and began to cultivate it and teach me his love of photography, showing me how to use the camera, showing me how to line up photographs and such. And then growing up, I would get my hands on other cameras. A Kodak 110, which had the thin cartridges. I had a disc camera, I don't know if you remember those, but it was about that big, thin, and shiny, and it was a wave of the future because it didn't come in rolls of film, it had discs of film. And then I even sent away for the spy camera. If you remember the little spy cameras on the back of the comic books, actually took pretty good photography. So I've had all kinds. About that time, but I had a hard time getting to my real camera. The real camera was a SLR, or a single lens reflex camera. And the reason why to me this was a real camera was more along the lines of what other photographers used. Other photographers used SLR cameras, so I wanted one of those. And I started saving up. Well, my family and I were doing back to school shopping. I was a freshman in high school. We walked into Kmart. And as I'm known to do when I walk into a store, I rush to the electronics section to look at the cameras and look at all the types of gadgets that are going on at that time. In one corner of the cabinet, there was an SLR camera that was half off. It was a repaired unit. It was a beautiful thing. It was a Pentax K1000, and through photography, you know that's a very basic camera, but to me that was the best thing ever, and I almost had enough money. So I ran to get my father and brought him over to show him what I'd found. And then some very serious negotiations ensued to try to secure that little bit of funding. He agreed, and all I can remember is just floating out of that store with that camera, going home, tearing it open, reading the instruction packet that was way too long, and just really enjoying that camera. And that camera never left my side. It went with me everywhere, to school, to church, and went with me to the dinner table, to bed, much to the chagrin of my mother. It just went with me everywhere. If you saw me, you saw that camera pressed up against my face looking at something. About that time, my dad introduced me to a great photographer, Ansel Adams, who, as you know, is known for black and white landscape photography. And his album, Yosemite, to me was just amazing. Each image in there was just awe-inspiring. Well, on our trip to Tucson, it was a family trip, we all piled into the station wagon, and we're heading to 237 miles to Tucson. My lens was pressed up against the glass of that station wagon taking pictures. And I was just clicking away. And my dad gets on me for wasting film. I thought it was Ansel Adams, to be honest. So I didn't look at it as wasting film. I grew up, graduated high school. Life gets complicated and gets chaotic, as it does for everybody. So my life moved on. Photography moved on. Photography was going through a revolution of sorts. Film cameras were becoming less popular. Digital cameras were becoming more popular. Digital cameras were cheaper, they were better, they allowed more access to more people to take pictures. And it just was a total change in the way that the art form was going down the path, and I was totally against it. How could you leave a film format that was so intuitive and so easy to work with? So I told my dad I would never, ever, ever use a digital camera. Little did I know he had already bought his own digital camera and was expanding his practice, his hobby. About 3 years ago, I started to look at getting back into photography. So after much debating back and forth, really trying to understand it, and then looking at the expense that film has become, I bought a digital camera and have bought the software and evolved to do what I used to do in the darkroom. So the challenges around learning, the fear that I had was around learning a new camera, learning a new way of doing photography, and learning a new way of creating images other than the darkroom. So that challenge was definitely pretty significant for me, but it provided me with an opportunity to learn new ways of doing photography and being able to express myself and use creative muscles I never used before. I'm fortunate that in my current job, I'm allowed to travel to different places. So I've been to places that inspire, that are inspiring around the country, around the state of Arizona, and outside the country. So that spark that started at my grandmother's table, that blew into a flame in high school, is back. And I'm excited about photography today. I've been able to take that spark from the streets of Yuma to the temples of Taiwan, from the deserts of southern Arizona to the cliffs of Moore in Ireland. Being able to see those places and being able to totally work to try to build images that inspire is my goal.